JWT, JSON text. तो एक एक करके हर चीज को एड्रेस करेंगे, right? We'll start with routing and then we'll head over to ठीक है. और for the database we'll be using PostgreSQL. ठीक है, so जिनको नहीं पता है, Postgres is the most famous open source SQL database in existence, right? Okay. तो मैं तो बोलूंगा it's preferable if you guys download a version of it and keep it on your devices. नहीं तो एक सेकेंड, एक रिसोर्स है, you guys can head over to this thing, Elephant SQL. Okay. So yeah, elephantSQL.com, this thing. So यहाँ पे basically you can get some not production grade but basically like मतलब छोटे छोटे तुम्हें PostgreSQL मिल जाएंगे for your test projects sort of. So you guys can check on these, right? Other than that, तुम्हें अगर चाहिए, so you guys can actually use mine if you want to, but remember there is a connection limit, so there is a chance that you guys will face some error. Okay. So अभी बता दूंगा. So this is just details regarding this, but when we'll set it up, we'll know how to set this whole thing up basically. Okay. So yesterday we were in our this place. We just created a single API which was for pinging and checking the server was working or not. Okay. So that is what we were yesterday. Cool. So today the idea is we'll be creating a complete user authentication flow. Okay, and let's just list out like what are the things that come under authentication. Right? You guys can hear me, right?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so what all things we come under in very basic terms, there are only two things, right? Sign in and sign up, right? Let's just take a look at these. Okay, so sign up pertains to uh, creating your account, right? Creating account. This can be with basically there are only two parts to every credential. We have our username and password. In our case, we'll be using email and password. Okay, so there'll be two things: email and password. So these are the only two parameters we'll be taking care of at this moment. Okay, and in case of sign in, right? So in case of sign in, again it's just two things: email and obviously password, right? There's one more thing in sign up that we often see. It's called confirming password, right? So you guys have seen this. It's nothing new. So the idea is whenever you do this confirm password thing, right? You have to make sure that this is being checked on the back end as well. Okay. So this is a very like it is a necessity. Don't ignore it whenever you're creating this kind of. In case you're not, because today we'll not be really tackling the confirm password thing. So we'll not actually take a look at this, but just for the email and password, we'll take a look. Right. So these all things that we consider come under workflow, right? So let's see. Okay. So first things first, we'll be creating basically route. Okay. So when we do our sign up, right, this will pertain to our route slash user slash register. Okay. So it will be something like you know localhost, uh, 127.0.0, one port 8000 because that's where we are running the server, right? Slash user slash register. Okay, and that on that we'll be doing a post request because the registration is creating a new entity. We're creating a new user. Okay, so this will be posted on a server, and this will create a user. Cool, right? And then we have our sign in. So again, sign in again will do a post to our 127 or localhost port 8000 email and password. Okay, cool. So that's two things covered right there. Cool. Let's start. So first, again, this was a discussion we had earlier in the group as well. What kind of folder structure, or what kind of uh, you know backend structure you should follow for your projects, right? So just as a JavaScript project, I prefer if you just use a simple segregation between your routes, your controllers, your middlewares, and then one or two more folders for your utilities and configurations. Okay. So first is obviously we'll be getting a route folder, right? Here we'll be creating a route by the name of user. So this will refer to our slash user route. Okay. So this will refers to slash user route. Cool. Right. And let me just clean this up actually. Okay. So we got the app.get thing, right? Now I said there is something known as router in Express. So what is a router? So in every application, in every web application, you see web routes, URL routes, okay, slash something, right? So in Express also we have such routing system built in. We call this a router. It helps us route, basically map different routes to a specific function or specific middleware, right? So let's first import our Express because that we need to import router from the Express. So we're going to require our Express. Okay, cool. So again, this is an old form of syntax. You have seen this yesterday as well. We did this, right? So this is importing Express. Then we are going to do const router equals Express dot router. Okay. And the thing about router is that whenever you're making such import, right? We'll be using it very extremely similar to how we are using Express here. Okay. So here what we did, we used Express app dot whatever method it is, followed by the route, then followed by the controller function or whatever function. So just give me a second. Okay, cool. Yeah, okay, cool. So we'll create a router, right? And then we'll actually create a routes. So user route. Let me just actually do this. So again, router is a function. It's very similar to how your Express application works. Again, it's an object. Your Express was also an object, right? We yesterday sort of set this up as an object. Okay, right. So now we just said we will creating two routes, login and register, right? So we will first do a router dot. So both will be post routes. We already established that. So it will be a post route, right? And we'll call this again to register. We haven't set up the slash user route. So it will be slash user slash register. Okay. We'll do the slash user routing when we'll be importing this route in our main index.js file. Okay. And then we'll do our, well, basically a controller. Right? For this moment, at this moment, we'll just simply do a regress and rest.send for, telling it's a register route, just for the sake of showing it. All right. So yeah, slash register route, and then we'll make a login route. Okay, same thing. Except we'll be doing a login and we'll send logging the user. Okay, cool. Makes sense. All right. So now we have our sort of template route set up. Go back to our index.js. Right. Now we'll be adding these routers to our Express application. Okay. So we'll be doing app.use. The use function in Express is used to add middlewares. Understand that in Express everything is a middleware. Middleware is just a fancy term to say a function which runs before a controller. Okay. So again, a middleware is also mapped to a specific route. So I just said we'll be running this on slash user, right? So slash user followed by our you know user routes. So let's just say, okay, one more thing. Now we already created our routes using these, right? We created the router.post register and router.post form, but we also need to export these routes. So for that we will do a module.exports. Again, these are older way of doing exports and things in uh, Node.js. These are preferable. You can obviously replace them with the new versions. There is no specificity to this. Okay, so router. Right. So now we exported our right. So we'll do const user routes for require, and we'll do dot slash of slash routes slash user. Okay. Cool. So you can see here it's a type router because that's what we exported, right? And user routes. Let's start up our server. So npm run dev. We created the script yesterday. If you remember, we created, yeah, the dev script. Cool. So npm run dev, listening on port 8000. All right. Uh, for the sake of checking, doing making the API calls, there are multiple tools that you guys can use. One of the most famous one is Postman, right? So if you have it, that's great. If you don't have it, I prefer you guys can actually use something known as Resto. Okay. So if you head over to your Chrome Web Store, right, and just search for Resto. So it's a REST client. It's a part of Chrome Web Store. You can directly add it from here. Okay. Another handy one that you guys can use is something known as REST client. It's a VS Code extension. It's very useful, and it will also help you because in case whenever you're creating documentation for your APIs, this is something you would love to use. Okay, we'll take a look at this sometime after this, what it is useful. Okay, cool. So I'd say for today I'll just use REST. You guys can add this to your browser and just follow along. Okay. So we said it's a post. Yeah, we said it's a post route. Okay. Let's just take a look at this. Yeah. It's a post route slash register, right? Slash user followed by slash register. Okay. So uh localhost 8000 because that is our port slash user slash register. Okay. In case of header, at this moment, we don't necessarily need any headers. So if you guys have worked with APIs, and I remember you guys had some, I think, public APIs in your React session as well, right? So in that case, you have to set headers for certain requests, right? So let's say I want to pass some data to my post request. In that case, I have to use the content type application JSON header, right? So it basically defines what the content type of the body is going to be. Okay. Only the post, put, patch functions, methods, HTTP methods have the body attribute, and you can send data along with your. Basically, you can send data as a separate in a separate entity of body, right? So this basically says we're going to send some JSON data. Okay. Currently, we don't need to specify any data. We can directly send this request and says register a new user, right? My bad, actually, is fine. Okay, I don't. Okay, fine. Yeah. So let's register a new user. Cool. So we can see this is working. Let me just check for the login one as well, right? And yeah, login the user. Cool. So I said to say, separate your routes, your controllers, your models, database models, and configuration and database, whatever files there might be, right? So this is just so you can see the function is directly a part of it. It's directly made inside your user.js file. We want to create separate controllers folder. So top level controllers folder to handle our control to basically handle a request. Right? So for this, uh, you can follow any conventions per se because Express gives you a lot of leeway in this case. This is a specific convention I follow. So user controller dot js, right? So routes just small small letter, small you know small small case lowercase user. That's it, right? In case of controllers, it is whatever the route is followed by the controller keyword, right? In case of model, I typically prefer initialized name. So let's say user entity, so that will begin with the capital U. We'll take a look at this a bit later. Just follow along, right? Okay. So again, I said that we'll be exporting these functions, right? So yeah. So again, also one more thing that we need to take a look at is uh, you have to make sure that most like all of your functions inside your controllers have to be async functions. And the reason for that is async functions are really, really good at performance part of this. Okay. You can use asynchronous functions in some places, but it's preferable to use async functions everywhere in your backend. So export, we'll call this register, right? So exports dot register, right? It's going to be an async function, async arrow function, right? And we have this. Also, if you take a look at this routes, you can see request and response and submits and long video function, right? So you can say request and response here. So our body, which will have our email and password, will be in our request dot body object, right? So excuse me. So yeah, so in a request dot body. So we can get that data from a request object, and while sending back the response, we can use that as object. Cool. So first, let's take those out. We'll do a quick. We'll segregate out email and password from a body. So that we'll do rec dot body, right? And then we have to register these. Basically, we have to save them, right? In a database. Let's say saving them in DB, right? Also, there are cases of leaks and whatnot. So make sure your the password for the user is always encrypted, right? Hashed, not encrypted, my bad. Hashed. Okay. So the very basic difference between encryption and hashing is that encryption is reversible, the hashing is not reversible. Okay. So saving them in the DB, and then we'll be sending the response. Cool. That will be arrays.send. We can also use a status function to set the status. So in this case, will be registering a new one. So let's say a 200 of success that it got registered successfully, and then we do this, right, with a specific message saying user registered. Okay. Uh, this is something again. It's a part of it's again optional, but it's preferable to have a specific structure for your responses. One of the most common ones that I see is something like uh, this. So it says a message, right? Some messages there. Then a status code is always sometime added to this, right? Something like not 200. Uh, Error. in case there was some error in the whole process. So, and sometimes we also see them like success. Okay. So success or status success, either or. So success is again, it's very similar to how your is, and both are pretty much complementary. So this is one of the most common structure I see for sending back a response. It doesn't have to follow this. For in my case, I just prefer to have message and success two fields, right? Right. And one more thing you want to make sure is that whenever you are sending back the response, you do a return, right? So it should not be just res.send, it should be return res.send or res.status.send, whatever, right? So something like this, that will be a register, right? Let's just also make up a login function quickly. Just copy this, right? And login, checking with the DB entry. Logged in, right? Uh, okay, I missed one thing extra. Okay, so there is also one more field. It's called the data. Okay, whenever you're sending back some data with the response, you generally have here something as data, right? Or yeah, something like this. Okay, cool. So those are the two requests, two controllers we just set up. Actually, it's just a single controller, two separate functions set up, right? And we'll import these here. So const will do a require of controller slash the controller, right? Register and login. So register, login. The whole thing should work completely, should be the same. In case it's throwing some error, cannot structure emails. Okay, so yeah. So like I said, it's saying there is some error because we do not send the email and password. Okay. Let's just add those two. So let's say we're trying to log in. Let's say we're trying to register something. Right? So I'll just use my own email ID. Right? And password. Let's just say password for now. Okay. Forward. And let's just restart this. Yeah. Okay. Send it back. It is undefined. Mm, just give me a sec. Why is it switching? Mm, there it is. Just give me a sec. Yes. Okay. So yesterday we did not set this up. Cool. All right. So again, we have things such as query parameters and body parameters, those things, right? So in our case, we'll probably not be will not be using something like body person. That will work, but we'll be just using, Express provides those directly in our Express function itself, right? So it would be something like adding a new middleware. Nice. So for the body, we'll be using express.json. So that will parse our body into JSON format, right? And then we'll be using our express dot what is it? I guess URL encoded. Yes, things like extended as true. Okay, so a URL encoded extended through this. I'll just give you an idea. So URL encoded, that is for route based parameters. So that will be something like slash, slash 123, whatever it is. And extended is for your query parameters. So you often see things like, just something like, we can see it. Basically, you'll have a question mark followed by certain properties in the route itself. Okay, you'll see it in many places. It's fairly common in your models. So basically, those are your query parameters, and we need those for certain. Basically, you need those as parameters for your get queries. Right. Let's see if that works. Yeah, it's working fine. All right. So just give me a second. I'll just turn off my phone. Yeah. All right. So again, register, login. Cool. So we can do the register and login part, right? Now the DB part comes in. We have a route, we have a control setup. We had one more folder for our models, right? So what are models? Models are uh, database objects in very simple terms, right? They also sometimes define your schema and basically your table schema, and we use them for querying with our database, right? So there are many ways to create. You can directly run raw SQL queries as well, but it is preferable to use something known as an ORM. So that's ORM stands for Object Relational Map. If I'm not wrong. Object Relational Map, yes. So it's preferable to use some sort of ORM. There are there are multiple ones that are out there. Type ORM is one of them, and you have SQLize, right? Let's stick to type ORM for this whole session because type ORM is extremely useful with our TypeScript. So the TypeScript will be coming up in our future sessions, where we'll be completely skipping over these things, right? We'll be going directly over to TypeScript and those things. Cool. So type ORM, it has everything inbuilt with it, right? That will be a TypeScript based, but we'll be taking a look at the npm.js module in this page. Right. Cool. So you define your entities and you do your querying. Find one, find. So we have basically find is if you're aware of SQL queries, then you guys should know how to find one, delete and write those things. All right. So for this, the first thing we're going to do is install type ORM. Right. We'll set it up for Postgres. Right. And then we'll just try to configure it up. Okay. Cool. So let's start the server, stop the server, right? Npm install type-orm, right? Also, there's one more thing we haven't yet taken a look at. It's called an env file, right? So env files are used for creating runtime environments for your node applications, right? And they can be used to store config variables, which might be a bit sensitive to store at just simple, JS constants. All right. So let's head over to the type-orm documentation. Entity management, working with entities. Yes. Okay. Let's create a file. Let's just start with creating a new model. .js, right? Import, or maybe just require. It's to import type one. Okay. Actually, you know what? It's already 7:46. And have you guys created an account for your Elephant SQL? This thing? No. Okay. Let's do one thing. Let's do one thing. You guys can set up Postgres, after today's session, right? After this session, you guys can set up Postgres on your own devices, and we can actually use that for the whole, follow in the following sessions. I hope these 30 minutes were like you guys were able to focus on these 30 minutes. I'm sorry for the disturbances. I have been seeing some calls. Right. Let's continue with the typo part tomorrow. We'll also, take a look at the readability part. But I guess in theory, you guys can actually get the gist of the whole thing.
Yeah. Yes, right.
Right. So I was writing things out in your comments and all, but yes, tomorrow we'll clear these out as well. Okay.
Yes, right.
So if you guys followed along, you would have these folders, everything set up. I forgot to send the notion. I'll send the notion right now after this. Okay. You guys can use that again. All right. Any questions? Anything you guys want to ask? Actually, there was one more thing that we discussed yesterday. Do you guys want to have a session on like a last session we can